Is iron essential for collagen production?
Yes.
It is?
Completely. There's an enzyme that's needed to synthesize collagen, and it's a hydroxylation reaction, and iron is crucial for that enzymatic reaction. So some people might be taking collagen or really focused on working on that. It's not going to work anywhere near as well if you're iron deficient. The other thing too, when our thyroid's underperforming or underactive, our skin cell turnover is not as rapid, so we can end up with sort of dead, dry skin on the outside, and it's not being replaced.
We do speak about it a lot on the podcast is perimenopause and menopause. And I have heard you say that, yes, that's extremely important. However, you should be looking at your iron first before you start attributing everything to perimenopause. Is that correct?
So
feeling confident in your skin is so much more than what you see in the mirror.
And how can you feel good? Well, that starts from within.
Welcome to the In Your Skin podcast. I'm Christy.
And I'm Anna. Join us each week as we sit down with world-leading experts and thought leaders to delve into the latest insights, groundbreaking research, and cutting-edge advancements in wellness, longevity, and beauty. Welcome, Dr. Libby Weaver. Thank you so much for being on In Your Skin. Now, I want to start with who you are. You are a nutritional biochemist. You have a PhD. You have not only one book, you have 14 best-selling books, which is nuts to me because I can't even write one. Haven't even attempted, so it's crazy. And I think you've been in this field for around 25 years. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What made you want to specialise in women's health?
I can't bear unnecessary suffering, and I see way too much of that coming from the way that we don't always look after ourselves in the best possible way, and I understand why we don't. So many women care very much about other people, and we do everything we can to make sure they're happy and comfortable and have the best life possible, and we sometimes fall to the very end of our own lists or don't even feature on our list. So I wanted to bring my knowledge or my education in nutrition and biochemistry and my real passion for mindset and emotional well-being to life through that lens to, I hope, make a difference in women's lives.
And was there a moment back then where you're like, okay, this is my calling? Like you just had that little moment, or was it just more of like over the years of studying? It
was an unfolding, Anna. Yeah. And so I did my PhD working with children with autism spectrum disorder. And after that, I then went and started working in some of the big health retreats around Australia. And that was where I really saw the effects of, I guess, chronic stress in people's lives. So where we are essentially, thankfully, really safe, but we live with the persistent production of stress hormones. So I really saw the effect of that. And I have a little line I use in my work or almost internally. I just want to follow the threads. So when there's this really strong pull to something, or I can see that worked out, I kind of follow that path rather than setting myself a goal and pursuing that particular path. I let things unfold rather than have that moment.
That's a good way to be. And I guess now, I mean, back then you're saying busy, rushing, and you've coined the term the rushing women syndrome. For those who haven't heard of what that is, I mean, we're all living in a busy world now, and I think a lot of us know and feel what that is, but can you explain what is the rushing women syndrome?
So it's not a medical condition. I think it's important to say that up front. It's the name I gave a book that I wrote back in 2011, which feels like 5 minutes ago, but that's 14 years ago. And I really thought it was just a moment in time where everything had sped up and I thought it would slow down again. But I wrote that book after observing what was going on with my female patients essentially. So it was the effects of living with the persistent production of stress hormones, because up until the relatively recent past, we only ever made adrenaline, for example, when our life was literally in danger. So someone from another tribe jumps out of the jungle at us, and in that moment, we have that fight or flight response kick in. Whereas now we might wake up in the morning and hopefully think of some things we're grateful for, or little humans might be prodding your eyelids open, which might be frustrating or spark joy. Who knows?
Probably more frustrating.
Both at the same time.
Both.
But then often we think of our to-do list and what we need to get done that day. We might have some coffees. We open our laptop and see there's 600 new emails that have come in that we need to deal with. So we just sort of spike adrenaline even though we're really safe. So I started to witness when women lived like that with that persistent production of adrenaline, it communicates to our body that we're not safe. And so the pituitary gland at the base of our brain, she then says to the ovaries, to the digestive system, to the adrenals, to the thyroid, to all of the endocrine glands inside of us that we're not safe, and they then respond accordingly. So we can end up with all sorts of challenges with our menstrual cycle, thyroid problems, digestive system problems, challenges with sleep, and on it went. So there's no disease. We just don't feel great, and we worry that, oh, maybe it's our thyroid, or maybe there's something wrong with my gut, or now my periods have gone haywire, or my perimenopause is really challenging, and we kind of can't label it. So I just put it all together and called it Rushing Woman Syndrome to really bring to life the role of the persistent elevation of stress hormones and what it's doing.
You said that you termed the coin back in 2011. Why is it having a bit of a resurgence now?
And it's nice that you say that. I think that surprises me, and then sadly it also doesn't. So I think the generation so I'm 50, nearly 51, and the women I wrote that for were around my age. And it's kind of hard to remember, but sort of smartphones we were suddenly walking around with the internet in our handbags. That was new. Whereas now I feel that book is really connecting with women again who are in that kind of age bracket where they have little children, they have careers they care about, they're in relationships they care about, they're trying to look after their health. So they might have aging parents, depending, obviously that can be super varied, but there are a lot of responsibilities. And like I said, we care so much as women, we care so much about other people and if they're all okay. But beyond that, I think we do also care what other people think of us. And so it's almost like this little perfect storm that I think we hit maybe around those mid-30s, late 30s. And so I think that the book, or that term, is popular again because there's a whole new generation experiencing it.
I totally resonate with what you're saying because I feel like I'm one of those women.
Oh, me too. As soon as you wake up, it's like, boom, it kind of hits you.
And sometimes you feel like you can't escape it. Like, how do I get off this treadmill, right? And I think a lot of women will be thinking, yes, that's me. I'm always on, I'm busy, I've got kids, I've got this, I've got that, and so much is expected of me. But how can we start to slow down or recognize if that is something that we are doing too much of? Because I think chronic stress is a huge thing, right? And you mentioned that before in terms of I experienced that, and then I got the gut issues and I got hormone issues and all sorts of things. And luckily I did start to recognize that and start to turn back and have a different lifestyle. But what's your advice for those who are thinking, that's me, but like, how do I stop?
So firstly, to see the body as this most magnificent vehicle of communication. So it's not trying to betray us. It's not running off on its own tangent. It's responding to the information we give it. So we need to find ways to communicate the truth to our body, which is that we are thankfully really safe. So whatever that road for you is, it could be some breath focus practices. It might be shifting your focus to think about what matters to me. What are my priorities? There are only 24 hours in a day. I can only fit in so much. So what do I value? Because we make time for what we prioritize and value. And so it means sometimes we need to let some other things go, which rushing women find really hard to say no or let those things go. But knowing what our values are, and when I say values, I don't mean ethical preferences like kindness or generosity. I mean, what does your life demonstrate that you value? What do you think about? What do you spend money on? What do you prioritize your time doing? So they're the things that we value, and sometimes a shift in our values can make a difference. But beyond that, I think it's where, some general lifestyle changes make a difference. If you're throwing down bucket loads of caffeine, it's going to spike adrenaline. It can put us into a really uncomfortable place when we already have that background wound up kind of feeling. So just be honest with yourself about how caffeine affects you. But the thing that I really love, I guess, these days is more the mindset work. So when people used to walk into my office, and I would say it's almost like you have a word across your head, and they are traits, behavioural traits that you want other people to see in you. And I've sat in your presence for 5 minutes and I can see your beautiful heart beams out of your face and how much you care, and your so you want people to see that you're very kind and that you're very thoughtful and essentially really selfless. So they're all traits that you already are. Yeah. My guess is when we get into that rushing woman syndrome kind of thing, we also care that others see that in us. So it's almost like we're not trusting that that's already visible. We're trying to prove it to other people, consciously or unconsciously. Yeah. So I like people, and I'm only saying that because it was me as well.
Yeah, everything you're saying is exactly right. And when I look back, it was me trying to prove myself to other people. Yeah. And that's why I was like that.
And so it's knowing a really good exercise, I think, for us all to do is to ask, what traits do we need others to see in us? And the way you want your mother to see you will be different from how you want your daughter to see you, from how you want a colleague to see you. So it's really helpful to write lists for all of them. And then the next time you're labeling something as I'm really stressed, pause and consider, am I perceiving someone is seeing me in the opposite way to how I want to be seen? And most of the time the answer is yes. And the reason that offers insight is because instead of just sitting there and reciting, oh, I'm so stressed, it means that you can either giggle at yourself or you have a conversation with someone that has a really different tone to it, or you express that it's really important to you that this person knows that you're a hard worker or that you're efficient or that you care or that you're prioritizing them. So it just means we have different conversations and our load lightens when we speak to kind of the elephant in the room, I think.
That's so important.
Yeah. And how many people do you, or how many women do you see that have rushing women syndrome? Is it most people? Because I feel like most women I know would have it to a degree.
Yes, Anna, I think so. And I guess most of us have really busy and full lives, and I think part of it is how we carry that. So when there's a beautiful book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, written by Bronnie Ware, and in that she describes about when you talk to people who are dying and you ask them what they're going to miss the most in the world, they tell you really ordinary things: the night sky, the smell of freshly cut lemon, your partner's face, your dog's fur under your fingertips, whatever it is. And we
makes me tear up a bit. I'm like, oh.
And we have all of that now. And so I think part of stepping out of the intensity of the rush is to remember that we have those things now and to let ourselves have those things rather than forever being in the pursuit of more or extra or growth, or even though that's gorgeous and that's can be rewarding in itself, when it's all that and there's not enough in that moment of cracking up at your child, cracking up at something, or you were sharing, Anna, how your daughter loves to swim, just watching her delight with water, playing in the water or whatever, and just being in that moment rather than thinking about the 50,000 things that I'm sure you have to do. Yeah. But it's that practicing those little moment-to-moment things can make a real difference, and how we carry essentially what we might right now perceive as a weight or a load or even a burden. A friend very recently nursed her dad to his passing, and he was her human. He was her absolute rock and favourite person on the planet. So it was a really big deal for her. And it was full on and for her, but she said she wouldn't change a minute of it. It was just such a privilege that she got to have her dad for as long as she had him. So it's sometimes remembering that, you know, you're running late and you're packing school lunches and it's intense and it's because you've got to be somewhere else as well. But it's remembering that in 5 minutes they're going to be finished school and you won't be packing the lunches and they'll be off living their own lives. So it's kind of being in touch with those little things at the same time as keeping the responsibilities going, I think. And that can bring the joy to the intensity of all the things we do.
And also appreciating how lucky you are in that moment where you're like, I actually get to take my kids to school. They get to go to school, and it's sort of, I don't think we've been talking about this a bit, but like, because we've been quite stressed at the moment, it's like, okay, we've got to think about the positives, how lucky we get to work, how lucky we've got to do this. Like when things go wrong, it's always about trying to think about the positives. But it's also okay if things do go wrong. And I think people need to acknowledge that it is okay, and it's more about like how we move beyond that.
Very much so. And you said a gorgeous phrase then, that you get to do this with your children. And I think when we endlessly phrase things mentally, I have to do this rather than I get to, we lose touch with the privilege of all these amazing things we get to do.
So what are some of the techniques and things that you do in order to slow down that maybe some of our listeners could take on and help them not be so rushed all the
Christy,
time?
it'll sound really basic, but
sometimes we need a reminder though, I think. I definitely do.
Nature is my North Star. So, and I'm obsessed with light. So even walking into this studio today, the first thing I notice is the light. So this beautiful light, whether it's a sunrise, a sunset, I observe all those changes in my day. So I watch the sunrise, I watch the sunset, even if it's just for 5 minutes where I've closed my laptop and I might still have to work after the sun has set. But I take those moments where I am absolutely in awe that sun comes up and allows us to have life on earth and for the food to grow and for our bodies to thrive and all the creatures to live. That all just blows my mind. It blows my mind that when I pause and think that I'm obsessed with iron at the moment and that all of the iron that gets to be on earth, including in our blood, came from a star billions of years ago. So I pause in my day and I think about those things and observe those things. And I think the more we live with awe and wonder, the better our health is and we slow down. And so that's nature is my absolute slowdown mechanism.
And it's good because I think, right, when you are rushed and you're busy and you're stressed about certain things, you're kind of narrow with your thinking. But it sounds like what you're saying is go broader, go general, think about the bigger things that are happening in life, and that can take your focus off all the little stressful things. And when you get into that moment and that zone, it helps your nervous system to calm down and just be like, okay, I can relax. There's bigger things going on. There's beautiful things in the world. And then you could probably get straight into okay, this is my to-do list for the day.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, spot on. That's so beautifully said. I love that you took that from what I've just said. That is what I'm saying. Yeah, go broad rather than staying in the minutiae for sure. Do you know the other thing that what you said just reminded me of? I think often when we're pursuing a solution for our nervous system and we think calm is the opposite of stress, I actually think the opposite of stress is of feeling really stressed and rushed is actually to trust. And we forget to trust. We forget to trust the unfolding and that it's been okay until now, and that even when life throws us genuinely challenging, confronting scenarios that you feel almost might split you in half, it is for us, even though it doesn't always feel like it when we're in it. So I think, remembering to trust the unfolding and that there'll be it's not to deny pain because the pain will coexist with the beauty, but it's to remember that when we're just focused on pain, there is beauty and vice versa. So it's kind of like when the clouds go in front of the moon, we don't stop thinking the moon's there. We know it's there. It's just veiled. The same happens when we're in a really painful or tricky situation. It's still really beautiful.
Yeah, it's a nice way to describe it. So can you actually see on someone if they are or they have rushing women's syndrome?
Sometimes, not always. I think a lot of women are really good at masking it. I think because we wear a lot of hats and we can put a face on, whether that's an expression or with makeup and tricks we've learned to kind of cover what's really there. So I definitely can in some situations. Some people don't mind you seeing it, but I think for a lot of women who are really quite burnt out, they've found ways to disguise it and it won't come out until someone like me starts asking questions. And I think too, when you sit with someone and you feel like you can be vulnerable and you can actually share the truth of what's happening rather than feeling like you've still got to be put together or show up how you perceive they need you to be, I think there's immense connection and understanding comes when we sort of drop our guard and say, yeah, well, I've been there too, and that then helps other women to not feel like they have to put that front on. So, yeah, sometimes they can, but not always.
Can you see it on their skin?
Yes, definitely on skin. But again, makeup can cover that. So, and when I was seeing patients one-on-one, in all honesty, most people came to a consultation with women would come with makeup on, so it's rare that they'd turn up so you can sort of see behind the veil.
Yeah. What are some of the symptoms of rushing women's syndrome and being busy and any chronic conditions?
So often the first thing that changes is the gut. So that people will get irritable bowel type symptoms, so intermittent bouts of constipation and diarrhea, or they might feel bloated all the time, or wind might increase. But that's new for them. And so then people usually go down some kind of dietary change road. And sometimes that's fruitful and sometimes that's actually really important because they might be living on too much junk and not enough real food. But then after a while of sort of playing with their food, they might not be getting any further. And that's where the inner work really needs to be done, and it's a lot harder, but it's usually where the rewards are. So the gut changes will happen first. The menstrual cycle will go out of whack, so periods either go missing or become irregular, or the opposite happens. They can become really heavy and really, really painful. Sleep gets disturbed, so you might go to bed and you felt really tired, but you lie there and you just, when am I going to fall asleep? Or maybe you're good at falling asleep, but you wake up in the night and can't get back to sleep. So it takes a lot longer for the thyroid to go out of whack, but the thyroid eventually will start to underperform. You won't necessarily have a thyroid disease, but it just doesn't work as well as it once did. So it's kind of just this cluster of symptoms that comes from the constant production of stress hormones.
Everything you were saying was literally my journey and my story, even down to the thyroid. But I was doing everything. I did everything right that the practitioners and doctors and everyone was saying, but it wasn't until I did the mindset work and the inner work is when it actually clicked.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so I had some underlying beliefs. I wasn't asking for help.
It's funny though that you left that to the end. I think people don't prioritize that, which that should be probably one of the first things that you do alongside the other things. But it's funny that you left it all the way to the end and it was probably years and then it's like, okay, now I'm going to focus on the mindset.
Yeah. So this is like your sign. If you're listening and you're feeling like that's you, just to tap in and really start to whether it's a psychologist or a mindset coach or whoever.
Yeah, very much. And we resist it because it can be confronting, and also we don't necessarily know where to start. So they're lovely tips for people to seek that support. Sometimes it's chatting really honestly with a trusted friend. You might have a friend who you think she's really wise and she really gets me, and you've been sort of pretending that everything's okay, or we might have challenges with relationships, or you might be really struggling with one of your children or your boss, whatever. But we pretend we want people to see others in a really nice light. And so we protect them by not necessarily speaking up about those big challenges. So sometimes chatting with a trusted friend is a great first step too, to start to see some of the beliefs, because we speak our beliefs. They're slippery. We're really good at knowing what we believe about things outside of ourselves. We know what we think about the family that lives in that house down the road, but when it comes to knowing what we believe about ourselves, it's tied up in our language, but we don't actually hear them as beliefs. We think it's the truth. And so that's why, working with someone who's kind of trained to listen for our beliefs can make a big difference.
100%. Is rushing aging us faster than it should?
Yes, very much. So the simplest way to picture it is your body's made up of about 50 trillion cells. So imagine a cell, someone took a pencil and drew a circle, that's a cell. And inside every cell is a city. And inside the cities there are structures being built, and then if they're not used efficiently, they'll get deconstructed and the bits that made it get put somewhere else inside that cell. And every cell eats food and every cell eliminates waste, just like we as a total human structure eats food and eliminates waste. So the cells, if you can imagine, for them to operate, they spin, things have to spin, and when we rush, it spins faster. And imagine a circle spinning around and it's throwing off waste, if you like, and it's throwing off what's called reactive oxygen species, so essentially free radicals when it spins too fast. And then if we don't have enough antioxidants to pair up those free radicals, then that's essentially one of the mechanisms through which we age faster.
And can you reverse the damage that's been done?
To a point, very much. The body has the most incredible capacity to heal. We just need to know the levers to pull to get it to do that. And so certainly the way we eat has a big impact. I see it as the foundation. I know it's my original training, but I can't help but see food as sort of the absolute foundation, because if your body doesn't have the structures, if we're not giving it the substances it needs to repair that damage or quell those reactive oxygen species, It's a fast track to aging rapidly, that accelerated aging. But when we start to give it more of that, it can absolutely heal. I don't know if it fully will. I like to think it can fully reverse, but that's because I'm super optimistic. And I've certainly you see changes in someone's skin. You see, sometimes within 2 weeks, you can see such a difference.
And you can definitely feel it as well. Like I know as soon as I start eating well and I cut out the junk, like I feel well, like immediately. And then certain things can happen, whether that's weight loss or your skin is more like glowing. So I feel like, it can definitely help. And it's just, I guess, to what extent. Now I'm going to go on to iron. This is going to be a big topic for us today. And you have just released another bestseller book, which is Fix Iron First. Can you talk us through why you decided to release another book?
So I feel like there are all these other nutrients that are getting all of the attention. Magnesium, vitamin D, creatine is having its moment. Everyone's talking about protein, and we're forgetting about this very basic nutrient, iron, and it's the most common nutritional deficiency in the world, including in Australia and New Zealand.
And why is that?
Lots of reasons, Christy. So the first one is across the menstruation years, we actually need 18 milligrams of iron per day just to prevent deficiency. So it's quite a lot. And I meet a lot of women who aren't going anywhere near hitting that target. So for some, it's just insufficient dietary intake, whereas for others, they have a problem with absorption. So if you can imagine that on the surface of a cell that lines the small intestine, there's a little truck that sits there that has to take the iron inside the cell. So some of us have those little trucks that don't work that well. They need a grease and oil change to work a bit better. So we can have absorption problems because of gut issues, or because we might be drinking too much tea and coffee at the time that we're having iron or an iron supplement. Calcium and iron compete for absorption. Zinc and iron compete for absorption. So there's all sorts of challenges. There can be challenges when it comes to iron absorption. Lots of fibre as well can disrupt iron absorption. So sometimes it's an absorption issue. Other times it's because of blood loss, whether that's really heavy menstrual bleeding, or it can be that you have a gut infection like Helicobacter pylori, which is the infection that causes stomach ulcers. Sometimes it's something like that. But quite often the combo I see is inadequate dietary intake and really heavy periods, and it's really tricky.
How do you know, though, if you're someone who isn't absorbing iron?
So you might be really focused on eating enough, or you take a supplement, but your blood tests don't reflect those efforts. So then you know it's kind of an absorption issue, so often related to something going on with the gut.
And does iron sort of go up and down? Like, could my iron, if I went and took a blood test today, could it be different to next week if I just decide to eat all the things that have iron in it? Is it going to be different?
So when we test iron, there are 4 parameters. So the group of tests is called iron studies. And so what you're talking about with the changes, that'll show up in your serum iron, which is one of the tests in iron studies. Then the other tests in iron studies, they won't change anywhere near as dramatically with those changes with dietary intake. So one of them is called transferrin, and transferrin is one of the taxis that drives iron around in the body. So transferrin elevates, it goes high in iron deficiency or iron deficiency anemia, because the body makes more trucks trying to pick up more passengers, more iron to drive around the body. Then there's transferrin saturation, so how many people are on in the taxis. But then ferritin, that's your iron storage. That won't change dramatically at all with a week of effort, of a week of focus on iron. So ferritin, think of it as your backup battery. So it's our iron storage. And in Australia, the normal range for menstruating women is 20 to 220 micrograms per litre. Now, we have to have normal ranges because it would be chaos without them. But that normal range is ridiculous to me. That bottom number is way too low for us to have great health. So ferritin minimum 50. A lot of women feel better when their ferritin's more like 80 or even 100. So it's really good to get copies of your blood tests and work on it.
I remember when my iron's been 13 before and just I feel so fatigued. But how do you know if it's low iron or it's burnout?
Blood tests.
Just blood tests?
Yeah. So a blood test will show you very quickly if you're iron deficient. It's obviously way harder to assess burnout. So burnout is essentially HPA axis dysfunction, where the hypothalamus, that region in the brain, has been saying to the pituitary for so long, we're not safe, and the pituitary's been saying to the adrenals, make your stress hormones. And that burnout comes when the body is unable to produce the cortisol you require, because cortisol does lots of good things. It's an anti-inflammatory. It's just when we have too much or not enough, it's a problem. And burnout is essentially when your adrenals can't make enough cortisol to meet demand. So cortisol gives us beautiful vitality and energy to wake up in the morning, and whereas with burnout, you feel like you've been hit by a truck.
If you want in on the secret to firmer, smoother skin.
Oh, yes, please.
Well, then you're going to want to hear about Olay's new Ultra Firming Serum right here.
It's their lightest, most powerful serum yet, and it literally feels like water when you apply it. But most importantly, it's packed with serious actives for firmer and smoother skin from day one.
It's formulated with PHCA, a revolutionary antioxidant that works 3.5 times better than vitamin C and bakuchi oil, which is a retinol-like alternative that is clinically proven to be as effective as retinol.
It's also great for sensitive skin, and I love that it's not just one benefit. You're going to get 5. Fewer lines, firmer skin, smoother texture, smaller pores, and real hydration.
You should start to see results from day 1. Your pores may look smaller. By day 14, wrinkles should start to soften. And by day 28, you hope to see a visible lift.
You can grab it now at Chemist Warehouse, give it a go, and let your skin do the talking. And what happens if you've had low iron for a long time and you've not addressed it?
Christy, that is something, I'm so glad you said that. I'm not asked that very often. I love that. So women aren't doing enough about it to address low iron. They just think my friends are all iron deficient. It can't be that bad. I'll just live with it. So when we live with it, because iron is needed for so many processes inside of us, so we need it to deliver oxygen to all of the cells, all of the cities. They all need oxygen. So our energy is compromised. And let's just pause there for a second. Think about what life is like when we are exhausted. You don't want to go for a walk. You don't want to cook dinner. You just get takeaway. You don't want to ring a friend. You don't have the words left at the end of a day. You might not apply for that promotion at work. It impacts how you speak to, you might be in an Uber, it impacts how you speak to the Uber driver as well as the people you love the most in the world. So lousy energy, the ripple effect of that is major. So long term, obviously our energy is compromised. It can impact thyroid function because iron is completely essential for us to be able to produce thyroid hormones and for us to be able to convert the inactive thyroid hormone T4 into the active thyroid hormone T3. So eventually the thyroid can become underactive, but it's just iron deficiency causing that. There's nothing actually wrong with the thyroid gland. Our mood changes. So anxiety is a symptom of iron deficiency. Anxiety can be caused by all sorts of things, but it is a symptom of iron deficiency. It's also when we get really depressed, when we don't have enough iron, we need iron to be able to produce some of our key neurotransmitters like dopamine for motivation, GABA for calm, serotonin, melatonin, so we don't sleep as well. There's kind of nothing iron deficiency doesn't touch, and the longer we live with it, the more of those things are likely to be impacted.
Yeah, it sounds like it's
And
important.
what levels are actually normal?
So I want ferritin between 50 and 150 for menstruating women. So that's, as I said, that's like a backup battery. Transferrin, the normal range in Australian pathology labs is 2 to 3.6 grams per litre. So once it goes above about 2.6, that's a sign of iron hunger. So that's your body seeking more iron. Whereas if your transferrin is between about 2 and 2.5, no problem. That's your body saying we're good right now. Another thing to keep in mind though is inflammation can falsely elevate ferritin. So your blood test will look higher than it actually is when there's inflammation. But inflammation also blocks iron absorption. So it's a bit of a double whammy. You might need iron, but if you've got a lot of inflammation from chronic lousy lifestyle choices or an injury, you're going to block that iron actually being absorbed when you actually need it. So they're things to keep in mind.
And why are women being told that their iron is fine, but in fact it's actually not?
Do you know, it was actually, there was a story done in the Sydney Morning Herald on the weekend about exactly that.
Oh, really? I didn't read it.
Was amped because obviously I care about it hugely and I'm trying to shine the light back on iron to resolve it for everyone, women, children, everyone. So it's a big issue, Anna, and I don't really understand why it's happening. I do think that ferritin, that bottom end of the normal range, is too low. I think it needs to be lifted to 50. So, for example, if you have a ferritin of 22, you'll be told your iron's fine when you'll feel lousy when your ferritin's only 22. So I think it's part of it too is encouraging us as women to advocate for ourselves. So we really need to say, look, well, I don't feel okay. We've got to get to if you're telling me my iron's fine, is it really? You might need a second opinion. Or if it is actually fine, keep going. So what else can be driving this, rather than just thinking I'm tired because life is busy and full on and I have a lot of responsibilities that at times I love and appreciate and at times I resent. But that is my life right now. But why am I so tired? And I think we need to stop living with that persistent fatigue, because there's information in that fatigue, and it's our body whispering to us initially, I need you to do something differently. And if we don't listen to the whisper, it will shout, and we don't want it to shout.
That's why you need to slow down so you actually can hear those whispers, right? So what about iron and the connection with conditions like PCOS? Is there any link?
So with PCOS, some women will still menstruate, others won't menstruate. So PCOS, in my opinion, is actually a really poorly named condition. So PCOS is a scenario where there's elevated androgens and elevated insulin, and they're the two things that stop ovulation. So the pituitary produces follicle-stimulating hormone, FSH, that says to an egg, I want you to ripen, and it'll start its journey from inside the ovary to the surface of the ovary. And then the pituitary makes luteinizing hormone, LH, on your blood tests around mid-cycle to say to the ovary, can you please release the egg that we've ripened this month? So in PCOS, those two hormones are either very low or they flatline. Occasionally they're high, but we want to understand why is ovulation being disrupted. So sometimes iron's involved, not always. It's usually we've got to look at and address the elevated androgens and the elevated insulin. But iron deficiency can also be involved.
Yeah, and I've had a few different experiences when it has come to my iron. So during pregnancy, it went very, very low. I think it was even lower than yours, like 8. And I was kind of tossing and turning about whether or not I get an iron infusion. I didn't get one at the time, and I took some of the tablets to help, and it kind of increased, but just like tiny increases. My doctor said that was fine because it was going up and it wasn't going down. So it was fine at the time. And then later in life, which was probably about a couple of years ago, I just was getting up. I was having what I thought 8 hours sleep, but I'd get up and I'm still so tired, even 2 hours after I'd woken up, and I knew something wasn't right. So I went and checked out my iron, and I don't think it was like super low, but it was probably just under the normal levels. And I decided to get an iron infusion for the first time. And I didn't know, I've heard a few things where it's like, don't get one, do get one, don't do. And what are your thoughts on iron infusions and if they work or not?
So a couple of things. We're so lucky to live at a time where we have access to that kind of medicine. So for some people, it's life-saving that they can have an iron infusion when they find out that it's rock bottom. What worries me is which is not what you did, but what worries me, I meet women and they'll say, oh, look, I don't worry about my dietary iron. Normal iron supplements constipate me, so I don't take them. I just live from infusion to infusion. So they just live on infusions. The worry with that is that it's a huge amount of iron being delivered directly to the blood, which some women get their quality of life back really quickly. For others, they feel pretty lousy for a couple of days because it can induce inflammation. It also doesn't give you copper and other nutrients that you need for the iron to be able to do what it needs to do in the body. So obviously one of the big things that iron needs to do is be delivered to the bone marrow to make new red blood cells. And we make 2.5 million new red blood cells every second,
Wow.
which geeks me out.
That is like crazy.
Very
It's like every second, 2.5 million new red blood cells.
What? Wow.
But our red blood cells, they only live for 120 days. And when they die, they donate the iron that was inside them back to the iron pool. So the body.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Again, we can just be in awe of our body and how it does that stuff. But for that process to happen, we need copper and we need vitamin A. So when we get an iron infusion, great, there's more iron available, but is there enough copper and vitamin A for it to be able to do what it needs to do? There might be, there might not be. So they're great to sort of save the day, but they're not what we want to be relying on. We want to get to the heart of why we're iron insufficient or deficient in the first place and address those things if we can.
Yeah, it actually took a while to kick in. They said around 10 days, but I felt like it was almost about 3 weeks until I really felt the effects. But I feel like what diet would you eat in a day to get the right amount of iron into you? What does a diet, or what do you eat on a day-to-day basis?
So I love food, and I eat mostly real food, and I eat red meat. I eat seafood, so I eat foods that have got heme iron in them, and I still take an iron supplement. So I still find it really hard to have the ideal amount of iron without supplementing as well. So not everyone needs that, but that's why blood tests are really important to see where you're at. So some people who eat in a vegan or vegetarian way, their iron's okay, but for a lot of people who eat that way, they're deficient. And then for other people, they eat red meat quite regularly. Some have great iron levels and some have lousy iron levels. So it's all depends on how we absorb it. So it's hard to say how to eat, because the way someone eats, I think it's influenced by their ethical preferences. It's influenced sometimes by religion. There's so many things that will influence the foods we're choosing. And I encourage people to notice what makes them come alive, what makes them feel energized and their digestive system comfortable. But certainly our best food sources are red meat, offal, so liver, mussels and sardines are another good source. And then in the vegetable department, seaweed is actually really rich, but we have to eat so much. Like 100 grams of seaweed, it weighs nothing, so you've got to eat quite a lot. Parsley, surprisingly, is another really good source, and kale. So there's some of the veggie sources, but we don't absorb the iron out of those plant sources nearly as well as the heme iron. From the animal sources, we need vitamin C with the non-heme iron to absorb it. But so.
And what are your thoughts on vegetables that you buy from the supermarket? Have they been stripped of their nutrients or not?
The longer anything is from its time of picking, the lower in nutrition it will be. So it's why if you can shop at farmers markets, and we don't all have access to them, I know, but if you do, or you can grow some things yourself in pots on balconies in apartments, or if you've got a little backyard, it's so easy to grow things. But farmers markets obviously are great because they've usually been picked the day before they go to market. So the closer something is to picking, the more nutrition will be in it. But in saying that, Anna, if the only thing people have access to is supermarket bought veggies, please don't stop eating vegetables because from a supermarket, we need those veggies going in because they've still got so many protective factors in them.
You touched on gut health and the absorption of iron. It sounds like it's quite important to look after our gut. What should we be doing, and how do you know if something's going on in your gut and that's then affecting your iron?
So when you use your bowels every day and it's really comfortable and it's really easy and the stools are formed, then things are going really well. If you have reflux, if your tummy gets really distended after you eat, if your stools are really loose or you don't use your bowels every day, that's all information that something is not quite right. And it's probably nothing major, but you might not be making enough stomach acid, for example. So when food goes in our mouth, obviously we're supposed to chew it. Some people just inhale it because they're in such a hurry, but we're supposed to chew, and then down it goes and lands in our stomach. And
you meant to chew for a certain amount of time? It's like 20
till it's
chews.
Yeah, as long as possible,
Okay.
till it's really sloppy in your mouth, basically, rather than chunky.
Okay.
And it's actually great that you said that, because for some people, even with IBS, just chewing for longer makes such a difference to their bowel function. Anyway, that aside, so chew really well till it's sloppy, then down it goes into the stomach and it's bathed in acid. Now, the stomach acid has a pH of around 1.9, which it's like car battery acid. It would burn us if it touched our fingers, but it's all housed in our stomach, and its job is to break the food down. So imagine food is like a big long string of pearls on a string, and the job of the acid is to pull the pearls off the string before the food continues on its journey. And then as that food moves into the first part of the small intestine, there's all sorts of enzymes that are produced from what's called the brush border of the small intestine, and your pancreas sits off to the side and it squirts bicarb and other enzymes into that first part of the small intestine as well. So for a lot of people, it's the stomach and then that early part of the small intestine where things go awry. But because we get bloated or uncomfortable kind of lower down, people think, oh, it must be my gut microbiome, or it must be my large intestine where the problem is. But usually, in my experience, the problem is higher up. So we don't make enough stomach acid because we're stressed. So when we're producing a lot of adrenaline, the blood is diverted away from digestion to our periphery, because that's what your body thinks is going to save your life, to power you to get out of the danger. But then digestion's compromised. So stomach acid is one of the first things to be compromised when we live with that constant stress. So we need good stomach acid for iron absorption. So I'll talk about supplements for a second. So old school iron supplements, it's iron bound to a salt or a chelate. And when we swallow that, the stomach acid makes that separate. And then the iron is free and it gets delivered to the wall of the gut cells. It gets taken inside the gut cell and exposes the gut cell to free iron, which is inflammatory, creates a lot of free radicals. Plus, then it's still got to get out the back door of the gut cell, and we need copper for that for us to even absorb it. So straight up, you need stomach acid. There's so much that can go wrong there with the gut for iron absorption. Whereas with the next generation of iron supplements made from ferritin iron from organic peas, it's absorbed completely differently. So most of it gets through the stomach acid. We don't need good stomach acid to absorb ferritin iron. And then when it gets to the gut cells, the gut cell itself reaches out and grabs the ferritin iron and takes it all inside. But the ferritin is a protein cage and all the iron's protected on the inside, so the gut cells never get exposed to the free iron, so there's no inflammation or constipation or those other symptoms, and then it's delivered to the free iron pool inside of us. So that's the future of iron supplements, is that ferritin iron supplements. And yeah, we don't need good stomach acid for that. So it'll overcome a lot of those absorption hurdles that you're mentioning.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah. And is that a recent thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. One thing I definitely wanted to speak about, because we do speak about it a lot on the podcast, is perimenopause and menopause. And I have heard you say that, yes, that's extremely important. However, you should be looking at your iron first before you start just attributing everything to perimenopause. Is that correct?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I could cry with you saying that. Yes. So that's why the tagline on the book Fix Iron First is the one thing that changes everything. So many women go into perimenopause with suboptimal iron levels, and it can, not for all, but for some women, it's a time where they start bleeding more frequently, so more than once a month, or the bleeding can become heavier. We're losing iron every time we menstruate. So we need a really good backup battery. And because we need iron for thyroid hormone production and for those neurotransmitters, it is a time where perimenopause is a time where we lose the buffering effect of progesterone. That's the first change that happens because we stop ovulating every month. And progesterone, yes, it's played a role in fertility up until that point, but its biological role is a very powerful anti-anxiety agent, and it's a diuretic. And so some women seem to really feel the months where they don't ovulate. And so we've lost that buffering effect. And when we have good iron status, we feel way more resilient. Our neurotransmitter production, I think, is better because we need iron to make all of those. The thyroid's working better. The cells are better oxygenated. Everything is working more optimally when we head into perimenopause with robust iron status.
So taking iron supplements or increasing your iron intake can help with the perimenopause symptoms?
In my clinical experience, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And do you take iron supplements, or can you take iron supplements on a daily basis without any negative effects?
Depends on your iron status. Okay. So you only need a supplement if you're deficient, because you can accumulate too much. So it's why we need to know where we're at with
What happens
iron.
if you have too much iron?
Usually the liver will not be happy because we store the excess iron in the liver. So when it gets really, really extreme, or if someone has the genetic condition hemochromatosis where they store too much iron, there's a lot of inflammation and essentially the liver can be damaged. But for most people, they're at the deficient end of the scale. So to answer your question, if you're deficient, then yes, a daily iron supplement is helpful. Some people feel better if they do it every second day. But again, with the ferritin iron supplement, it's very gentle, doesn't cause constipation, and it's super bioavailable.
But how do you know? Because like if I feel like I've got energy and I can get up, do I have to be doing blood tests to check my iron levels every 6 months, every year, every couple of weeks? What would you suggest?
So if you've got good iron status, just a yearly blood test I think is really wise, so that if it has gone down, you can address it sooner rather than later. If you have a blood test and you find out you're deficient, then take steps to address it and then check 3 months later that what you're doing is working, whether it be supplementation or more focus with your diet or correcting gut issues. So if you're coming out of a deficiency, then more frequent blood tests are really helpful to know, that it's working. Whereas just if you're fine, if your iron's okay, a yearly blood test to make sure it stays that way is a great way to go.
When it comes to perimenopause, why do you think women aren't prepared for it?
Can we take a step back from that? Because until not very long ago, perimenopause was a word that only health professionals used, and now it's everywhere. And that has so many benefits and a couple of drawbacks. So the benefits obviously is that women are finally getting the help and the support that they need and deserve, and there's so much more information out there around how we can be helped if we are suffering. There's a huge community now of women jumping in to support each other, and that's magical and brilliant and beautiful and very necessary. One of the drawbacks I see, though, is that women who are now in their 30s are now terrified of perimenopause.
We're a little bit. But
And you don't need to be, because for a lot of women, they have very mild symptoms or absolutely no symptoms, but we don't hear from them. So before I wrote Fix Iron First, I actually sat down to write a book about perimenopause, which I haven't finished. I wrote 62,000 words and then the first 11,000 words were about iron deficiency. So I really wanted to speak to that.
Will you go back and finish writing it?
Maybe. I have a lot to say about it and I get really worked up about it. So, but obviously to write a book, it's a big chunk of time out of your life where you're not doing, well, for me, I just stop doing everything else and I just do that. So that's tricky. So I'll see. But in a nutshell, it's really concerning to me that too many women sort of in their 30s are now really frightened of it. And prior to sitting down to write the perimenopause book, I did interviews with women who were either in perimenopause or out the other side of it. And the majority had really mild symptoms or no symptoms. And when I said to them, did you share that? None of them did. None of them spoke about it. And when I said why, they either said, nothing to tell, there's literally no story to tell. What am I going to say?
And they probably didn't know they were even going through it, because a lot of people don't even know that it can go for 10 years or so. So they probably just didn't even realise to then
the periods changed and stopped. That's right. So there was nothing to report other than my periods have changed and now they've stopped. And then for others, they said they didn't share their story because they felt guilty because their friends were suffering but they weren't, so they didn't want to make a thing about it, and they had a refrain they would use, it must all still be ahead of me. But it wasn't. So what I'm really interested in is if changes in sex hormones were the sole driver of perimenopause, of the symptoms we're currently attributing to perimenopause, then we would all suffer. But because we don't all suffer, there must be other factors other than the changes in the sex hormones that's contributing to symptoms. I'm not denying changes in sex hormones don't play a role. Of course they can. I've written books about it. Mm-hmm. But what is leading for some women for it to be really debilitating and what is leading it for others to be really mild? And that's where my curiosity lies. And that's where I'm really interested in the role of nutrition, the role of our metabolic health, what's happening with our nervous system, with our thyroid function, with liver fat accumulation, with insulin resistance, with bile production, all those things that create our general day-to-day well-being that we don't really think about until they've kind of gone wrong.
Do you know the answer though?
Yeah. I think because a lot of women will be listening to this who may be suffering from symptoms and going, what can I do about it?
Yeah.
And we know there's a role in HRT.
Yep.
What else could we be doing to help reduce symptoms of perimenopause?
So understand what's happening for you as a whole person. So be honest with yourself around could you have some liver fat accumulation? So be honest with yourself around things like alcohol consumption. Is that something that needs to reduce or not be in your world for a patch of time? I'm not going to say for a second the amount of alcohol that's okay for someone to have, because I think we know in our own hearts when we're having too much of anything, sugar, alcohol, social media, not enough vegetables. We all know when we're doing something that's not quite right for us. And where my curiosity lies is way more in, if you know something's hurting you and you're still doing it, why are you still doing it? That's where the juice is, more in that mindset-y kind of stuff we talked about earlier. But if you're suffering right now, if it's heat related, the liver is the first place to look. So what can you do to better care for your liver with things like lifestyle changes? Or there are some beautiful herbal medicine out there that can make a really big difference to liver and that heat that comes from the liver when it's having a hard time. Or is it more of a stress kind of picture? So an amped up nervous system, that persistent chronic stress hormone production has popped you into that state of being in sympathetic nervous system activation all the time. So is it time where some priorities need to change? Is it a restorative yoga practice? Is it a breath focus practice? Is it reconnecting with nature? I think so when we are suffering, instead of seeing it as like a betrayal of our body, I try to encourage women to see it as a redirection. So it's almost this grand opportunity. Do you want the second half of your life to look the same as the first? Or are there some things you would like to do differently? Because now's your moment. Now, I get goosebumps when I say that, but I'm not saying for a second that's easy, because sometimes the big kahuna that comes up is I need to change my relationship or I need to quit my job. Like, they can be really big things that bubble up, and other people will be affected by that. Family members, financial status, all sorts of things can be affected that are really confronting. So I'm not saying for a second that it's easy, but it's, again, where it comes back to trust. It's your body is, I honestly believe, this most magnificent vehicle of communication. And sometimes we haven't listened to the other little nudges and pushes, or I get emotional talking about it, the little prompts we've had in the past. We've been able to push them aside in the earlier part of our life. But now our body's saying, you can't get away with this anymore.
So true. Oh my God, I totally relate to a lot of what you're saying. I think there's a lot of women, especially in their 40s, who are going through some of those thoughts and changes, and maybe are starting to listen to their bodies a little bit more, because you can't do things like you could in your 30s or your 20s, you know.
Also, you put it aside. Like, I didn't listen to my body because I felt like I didn't need to. It doesn't matter what was happening. I was like, it's fine. It's just like, I'm in my 30s, I'm invincible. But when you're in your 40s, it's like you actually start taking notice of your health and all those little things.
Yeah.
It's really important.
And I think it's really important to go, okay, well, what do I need to let go of? Like, every stage of every decade is kind of like a season, right? And so that's why it's important with the mindset work to be really get in touch with who you are, what you want in your life, taking out all the noise, societal pressures, all that kind of stuff, to actually go, who am I? What do I want? And I think that's a pivotal moment in a lot of women's lives, especially in their late 30s and early 40s, that start to think about that, because you go, I'm kind of like, well, midlife. I don't think it's midlife anymore. I think 40s is near 30. But I still think that it's just a stage and time that you've got to go, I've actually got to start letting go and rethinking about, how do I want to live? And I know personally, going through it at this time, and just going, do you know what? Like, how I was hustling, working so hard, like my 30s is now going, okay, well, I am coming into a stage of my life where my hormones are going to change. How do I start to think about life now? And can I change my lifestyle, improve my diet, all that kind of stuff, relationships, things like that. And so I think that's really important, Yeah.
And it's beautiful to hear you describe it like that. And I think nothing exists without the other. So it's almost like we can't forget about nutrition, or we can't forget about, if we're insulin resistant, for example, it's going to make perimenopause way worse than if we're not. So let's address some of those biochemical changes if we're iron deficient, if our thyroid's not working as well as it could be. And so find people in your world who can help you with those things if you suspect that your earth suit actually needs more support, your chemistry. And then rather than seeing it as a big list of things, I need to sort what? Nutrition, chemistry, relationships. Like it can feel like a list, another list.
Yeah.
But just think, I'm just going to do one thing right now, and that is fix my iron or address my insulin, or I'm just going to take a break from alcohol for 2 weeks. Or it's just pick one thing that you know is a big thing for you and act on that one thing, and then other things will become easier or they'll bubble to the surface when you want to address those.
So I want to go back to iron. Just one last question on iron. Is iron essential for collagen production?
Yes.
It is?
Completely.
Talk us through it.
So it's actually, there's an enzyme that's needed to synthesize collagen, and it's a hydroxylation reaction, which is boring chemistry, but that's what spins my tires. And iron is crucial for that enzymatic reaction. So if some people might be taking collagen or really focused on working on that, it's not going to work anywhere near as well if you're iron deficient. So because iron is actually needed for your own body to synthesize it. So that's one of the things. The other thing too is it's kind of a bit of a backward link, but because we need iron for our thyroid to work really well, when our thyroid's underperforming or underactive, our skin cell turnover is not as rapid, so we can end up with sort of dead, dry skin on the outside, and it's not being replaced. And thyroid hormones are needed for fibroblasts to get the message that they actually need to make more collagen and elastin, but the thyroid needs iron to actually function and make those hormones. So there's actually a really funny little cycle there where the thyroid needs iron, but collagen production itself needs iron. So that's what there's some of the things that I get people to think about in Fix Iron First when they want to think about their skin. It's kind of from the inside out, and what are the nutrients you need for all of those things to work at their best.
Yeah, obviously collagen's very important to our listeners. So thank you for that.
Yes. I know as you're talking then, I'm like, okay, all of these things to make my skin look better and anti-age me. But do we just go to our regular GP to get these tests done? Or
Yep. And have a conversation there rather than, I feel sorry for GPs right now because they have kind of 10 minutes to do what they do. Some of them they really embrace kind of holistic medicine or integrative medicine. Others don't. So find someone who really gels with how you want to work. But yeah, just stock standard blood tests can give us great insight. Just seeing a nutritionist or a naturopath, they can order blood tests for you, but then you will have to pay for them. So it's, I guess, being open to that as well.
Yeah.
Or read your book.
Yeah, I could read your book. We have one last question we ask all of our guests. What makes you feel confident in your skin?
Apart from the blow dry you said earlier.
Definitely a blow dry. It's so my thing. So a blow dry. But other than that, it's actually remembering to trust. I feel that when that word flies into my head, it's like I slow my breathing, my breath deepens and expands, my shoulders drop, my posture alters. And when I hold myself differently, more softly, but also with strength, I can feel my own resilience. And that gives me great confidence that whatever unfolds, it'll be okay. So it's that trust and its impact on my physiology as well as my psychology.
Love that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And also, where can we find you? Social media, your books, everything.
Thank
You've got a lot going on.
Yeah, thank you. So my website is drlibby.com and my supplement range is bioblends.com. So
we'll put in the show notes so they can find you. But thank you again for joining us today.
It's been a joy to sit and chat with you. Thank you.
Thanks.